Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's Movie Reviews in the podcast form. Today we are back with our third Seattle International Film Festival review. Last night I took in a new movie, The Egyptian, which was really nice being back at the Egyptian Theater up in Cap Hill. I got to go to the Uptown Theater for the Steph Curry documentary near Queen Anne. That was great too. Shout out to both venues also for serving alcoholic beverages and great food and snacks. And, shout out to SIF just for keeping so many of these historic theaters in Seattle alive as well. It's really a cool experience to get to a movie theater and you're like, oh, they've got these great curtains. And look at all the design on the roof and on the sides, and it really does feel like a theater does because it is. It's not a movie theater. It's a theater. So it's always fun taking in a film there, and so it was fitting that we were going to a late night screening of a potential monster movie with My Animal. My Animal's directed by Jacqueline Castell and written by Jay Matthews, and the film follows Heather, who is our teenage werewolf protagonist. I don't think I'm really giving anything away by telling you that this film has an air of werewolfery around it. It's certainly not the driving force of the movie, and it's never necessarily the focus. So it's kind of like, it's there in the background, but this film is certainly more a coming-of-age film for this young girl who plays goalie. They're out in the Canadian wilderness in a really small town. It's always snowing. It's always cold. Heather plays hockey. She's the goalie, wants to be a goalie for the adult team. But, she's kind of out here on her own. She's got a couple twin younger brothers, but, they're like Tweedledee and Tweedledum to her and just obnoxious. And so there's not too much going on in her life out there. Every night, especially when the moon is out, she's got to be careful when she goes to bed. There's certain things like locks on all the doors, shackles kind of near her bed, not for the reason you'd think maybe, but it's clear she kind of seems to live a pretty isolated life. But all of that changes when a young woman named Johnny comes into town. She's a figure skater, and so she spends a lot of time at the rink where Heather works and plays all her goalieing when she's playing hockey there. And you can tell that Heather is kind of immediately drawn to this girl. She kind of has certain fascinations about her. She kind of has these almost visions of her figure skating as she watches her, and it kind of puts her almost into a little trance. So Heather, played by Bobby Salver Menuez. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She takes an opportunity to go talk to this new girl. Learns her name is Johnny. She's played by Amandla Stenberg, who I knew for some reason, and then getting home I realized that she played Rue back in the Hunger Games, 11 years ago. I was like, she looks familiar, but I'm like, why is that? I can't put my thumb on it. Well, that was why, because she was a child having a spear hurled at her, and one of the saddest deaths in that movie for sure. So she meets Johnny, and Johnny has a father who is also a figure skater and is just pushing her and pushing her and pushing her, and both these girls almost kind of feel like outcasts. So they form a friendship, and who knows? Maybe it'll be more than that. The both of them certainly have terrific chemistry, both on screen and just as the characters do in the movie. And as Heather finds herself more and more attracted to Johnny, she also has to reckon with the fact that she lives within a certain set of rules. Rules to keep her safe and rules to keep others safe. And this is where I meant that, the werewolf stuff, and again, I don't think I'm spoiling it, it's just kind of there in the background. I went into it thinking maybe it was going to be more horror, more full-on action, whatever. It is not. And it is not that's not a knock on the film for not being that. This is at its core, I think, a coming of age lesbian teen drama that takes place out in the middle of the Canadian woods, and it just so happens that this girl happens to be a werewolf as well. It's never treated as the focus of the story, but it certainly informs a lot of her own decisions and her skepticism when it comes to how late she can maybe stay out or the situations she's putting herself in. And at the same time, she's this teenager going through all these hormonal changes on top of being this werewolf. And so, you're seeing outbursts at the parents because, it's not fair that I don't get to go out. I want to be a normal kid. I want to do normal things. And then, of course, when she does normal things and goes out and drinks with these kids or does whatever, you're just like, oh, no, something bad can happen here, where it's almost like a race against the clock. And so in a lot of ways, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed a lot of the kind of trance-like, dreamlike sequences we have between Heather and Johnny. I enjoy, to a degree, some of the dancing around the fact that, she is a werewolf. Like, if we don't have to show it, we won't. Kind of became the feeling of the film. And, like, it reminded me when they made the Godzilla movie, I guess like 10 years ago or so now. And, I just kind of kept waiting. I'm like, are we going to see Godzilla? You just get little glimpses here and there, little hints that you're like, okay, clearly there's a beast, but, we haven't seen it. You'll see scars, scratches, footprints, certain things, and you're like, okay, I know it's here somewhere. You get a glimpse, a little fang here or there, the eyes glowing like the moon. But unlike Godzilla, at least, there wasn't I don't know. I didn't need a reveal in this film necessarily, but I don't know. I guess I was expecting a little bit more out of the film to kind of help land the plane after they'd taken off. There's some real moments of opportunity where I felt like, okay, cool. Here it comes. She's going to wolf out. People are going to die. Something horrible might happen. And the film always kind of errs on the side of caution. It never really gets to a point where you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're moving on. Or I guess we're just going to take that one on the chin and move forward. I looked into the film after watching it because I don't want to say, it's definitely an independent film. It doesn't have a huge budget. But in learning a little bit about the movie afterwards, they shot it back in 2022. And this was during the Omicron variant because up in Canada, both their lead actresses got COVID. Production had to be shut down for 2 weeks. And because of it, they only shot for 2 months. But shutting down for that 2 weeks ate up at least a quarter of their budget, which I'm sure was not the biggest to begin with. And I'm not saying that it shows in the movie, but reading that, I'm not saying it made me feel better, but it made me definitely understand a little bit more behind the production, maybe what they were going for, and what eventually maybe they were able to do as far as effects go, or where they wanted to take the story, but maybe what they couldn't end up doing. Because I think there's a really compelling story here. And I was completely invested in their would-be romance, could-be romance, and this, this tension between them, and this whole idea of, I'm like, okay, can she make this work? Can she live a teenage girl life while within her limitations as a werewolf? And there's a lot of really good, like, brilliant little moments that obviously kind of clue you into what the home life is like, maybe past times that she got out. Like I said, there's lots of locks on all these doors, and the way that they show it, or, you don't see them locking all of them, but you hear them and they're all really loud. Or the fact that, she's chaining herself up at night to sleep just to make sure she doesn't get out. There's some really good stuff Maybe I just wanted a little more, and maybe I'm selfish, and I don't mean to be. And I want to be fair to the filmmakers here, because the performances in this film are terrific. The cinematography, I really actually was taken back by a lot. For filming somewhere where it's almost constantly snowing all the time, you're driving on top of snow. I thought they were able to use light in a really interesting way, in a really cool way. Or, the fact that, if we're going to be out doing something in the middle of nowhere, you need the car to be running to be warm. And so, you've got this red brake light almost kind of within the smoke and the fog and the coolness outside while the two girls are talking. And there's all these moments that kind of create a decent amount of tension, whether they intend to or not, whether the scene is meant to be tense or not. You're still like, all right, we're out here in the middle of the woods. Who knows what's going to happen? There's already some pretty douchey guys in this movie who you're hoping will probably get theirs at some point, or get what's coming to them. But I think what this movie kind of confirmed to me too, though, and I was talking with my buddy Preston after we saw it, I think maybe it's just harder to do werewolf movies. And I really think that's just because people get caught up in, okay, do we commit to the werewolf bit? Are you going to be this monstrous man-like creature who transforms and is, probably still as big as a human, if not bigger? Or do we go the Twilight route, where it's like they are wolves, but they're like bigger wolves. They're like dire wolves, some Game of Thrones, like they got some meat on their bones and they're taller and larger and more deadly. Or do you say, screw it, we're just going to go with like a wolf, and you're going to be like a small, still intimidating, but, you're going to be a wolf. Thinking back to movies where have werewolves or have some sort of fusion between the two, it really is hard when I think back. And I'm thinking about all the werewolves I've ever seen. Like, I don't know if there's like a really clean transformation that exists out there. And I'm willing to be proven wrong. Send me something if you think like, nah, this is totally clean here. I'm like, I know the Twilight, they kind of like jump and the clothes tear off as they morph into a wolf. And I'm like, and those look pretty decent. I'll give them that. But I couldn't help but sit in the theater thinking about like, well, number one, like those masks you can get at Halloween stores. And somehow if you go practical, even if it's a little cheesy, I think it plays better sometimes than either dancing around it or just going for the full visual effect. And so, and being in that theater setting there, not just a movie theater, but a theater, I was thinking about Michael Jackson's Thriller. And just all these little things, even in that movie, where the voice kind of changes. If you're worried or, she's running away from people or something, or Michael, get away, as he's transforming into this werewolf, this creature. It just, I don't know. I'm like, you could do something where, you got the shirt on and you got a whole bunch of hair sticking out of the hands. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to nitpick this film, especially with the budget issues they had. It just felt like they were going, and it was building towards something, but it just didn't pan out maybe the way they wanted it to, or the ending just fell a little flat for me. So if this comes out on streaming, I would definitely check it out. It is fascinating enough. Definitely more of that love drama kind of story at the core of it. Great performances. But I don't know. It left me wanting a little bit more. And maybe that's why they just make more vampire movies. Because it's just a little bit, I don't want to say easier to do. But, you just need some fangs, some white powder, a big collar, and a cape maybe. But you don't have to worry as much about those effects. Or, the vampire's just going to bite you. He's just going to suck your blood. He's not going to rip your throat out like a wolf might. And I kind of wanted to see that too. I was like, all right, if we're going a wolf route, I'm like, let me see some of the damage at least maybe. But no cigar. So my animal, I liked it. I just needed a little bit more. And maybe that's just me. But prove me wrong though. If you got a good werewolf movie out there that you think I haven't seen, that's not, an American Werewolf in London or Michael J. Fox playing Teen Wolf basketball, let me know. Because I'm always open to some more werewolves. Thanks again for listening, guys, and stay tuned for some more SIF coverage.